Oh yeah, in case I didn't mention, all the pins are worn on this thing too. Alright, so anyways, what I want to do first is I want to see if I can take this rear bucket assembly off. And the way it's sitting right now, you got a pin down here that's really hard to get at, and this pin here, this makeshift deal here, some kind of homemade deal here, snap rings and everything. But what I want to do is I want to change the position this is in, and since it's not running, I can't use the hydraulics to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Ford 1920. I'm going to hook a chain up at a low point and see if I can't force this arm to come down. Yeah, right. There was no way the tractor wouldn't even budge it. It started spinning its wheels, even with the differential lock on. Just spinning its wheels. There's no way that's going to pull that out. So plan B, I don't really need to get to this pin right now because that only holds this arm, which is attached to here. So if I can get this pin out and this big pin out and these little arms off here, I can actually get the boom separated from that bucket, and then I can see if I can just pull the boom out. So of course there's probably weight on that right now, so even if I do get those pins out, that's probably going to want to drop straight down. But well, first let's see if I can even get these pins out. Well, this pin came out easy enough, but this pin's another story. There's a collar on the end here. The collar's got a bolt driven right through it that goes through here, and there's a nut on the other side. I'd like to rotate this whole thing around so that the bolt's facing up. Then I could grind off the nut and drive the bolt out and take this collar right off. The problem is I can't rotate this because on the other side here they've got a square plate they tack welded on, and they tack welded this little stopper over here, so this whole pin can't turn. So I guess what I'm going to end up doing is first I'll try and take the nut off for giggles and see if I can get that off, and if that doesn't come off, I'm going to grind off the head of this bolt and try driving it this way. I can't drive it this way because I can't get in here because of this. There's no clearance. Of course, it's not going to come all the way out, but if I could drive it part way out, I can then cut the bolt and then repeat the process and get it out in sections. Well, that was nice. The nut came off with no problem, and I was actually able to tap the bolt out this way until I could get enough to grab onto, and wiggled it and tapped as I wiggled and got the whole bolt out. Now I'm wondering if I can pop this collar off, or actually now I should be able to just maybe if I bang on the pin hard enough here, I might be able to drive it right through. Well, I'm pounding on this right here with all my might, and it's not moving at all. Now that's making me think that, I mean, this collar could be seized onto here from rust, but there's a space between the collar and the plate here, so why that isn't changing kind of makes me also think that the pin just doesn't want to move. It's frozen in there. The other thing too is the way this is sitting right now, there's probably an awful lot of force right here from this boom going down onto this pin. So I think what I want to do, I'm not going to bother doing it today. I'm going to go in and watch the wild card game that the Steelers are playing against Tim Tebow and the Broncos, and think about this a little longer. But I think what I'll do is I'll set something up here. I'll put a hydraulic pump jack right here and try and lift at this point right here, take some of the tension maybe off of this pin, and maybe then it'll come out. Well, I jacked this up, was able to move this boom arm up, or the dipper stick up, and was able to see that the pin's not frozen where it travels through this section, but it seems to be frozen where it travels through this section and that section, at least one if not both sides. So I'm going to see if I can't apply some heat and see if I can't break it free. Well, that pin's seized. Can't get that out. I'm going to need a torch on that, acetylene or propylene, which I don't have. I did get this other pin out, took that bracket assembly off the bottom there, yanked it with the tractor a little bit and got it to move a little bit more. But now I'm going to disconnect the lines, hydraulic lines to this cylinder, so that as I pull on it, that cylinder can collapse without any back pressure. All right, I've got it moving pretty good now. One of the problems I forgot was I forgot about this big cylinder here that, of course, makes perfect sense now, that as that dipper stick gets pulled out that way, the boom needs to come down. And this cylinder actually never gave me any trouble. It always held up pretty well. You know, it didn't have as much leak by. So what I ended up doing was, after I pulled on it again, I then activated the lever here, and lo and behold, whoop, it moves. Of course, now that's forcing the fluid out of the other cylinder, which I have disconnected, and I've got to get more buckets for my fluid. Well, I decided to remove some snap rings, since that's another thing I can do fairly easily, and I busted off some of them because they got so rusted in place. But I got a lot of the snap rings off, and then banged on the pins a little bit to see which ones are frozen. And good news is just about all of them move. That one moves, this one moves, which means I can remove this cylinder. This one removes, and the other end is already disconnected, so I can remove this cylinder. This big one here at the pivot point moves, so if I give up on getting that apart, I could drop this out and take this arm off. The dipper stick and the bucket as one assembly. Problem is, it'll be so damn heavy I won't know what to do with it. This pin moves, which actually anchors the top of the cylinder you can't see, which is that one there. And oh, I missed one. There's a snap ring on that one there. So if I can get that snap ring off, then I should be able to drop that cylinder out also. Although that must be a tricky one to get out, because you can see right now it's not going to want to come out until after that. This whole arm right here is basically off the machine, and that's held on by this really big pivot pin here, which I can practically turn that with my hand, so that cap will come off easy enough. And then the question is that pin seized in there? Well, I guess I'll get to work. I'll undo the lines on that other cylinder right there and drop that cylinder off. Alright, this big cylinder's ready to come out as soon as I drop the pins out. And same with this one here. Alright, the bucket cylinder is off. Now I'm going to disconnect this end of the dipper stick cylinder. Well, when in need of a drift pin, just use a smaller pin that I already took out. This one came from the bucket there, and I can bash on the end of that to drive that pin out. Well, I drove that pin all the way out, and I actually expected this to drop down, but there's still space in there. Well, I got the cylinder disconnected here, and I got that pin out there, so that dipper stick and bucket should be able to separate from the backhoe now. So I'll give it a yank with the tractor and see what happens. I'd take a little running start and give it a mighty yank, but it's separated. But how do you like them apples? Pin's out and it's still stuck in there. Huh. Well, it's hung up on this bushing on this side. That bushing's pushed in just a little bit further, and it's actually hanging on that. This one's clear, but this whole boom, because the way I pulled it, it's kind of cocked that way. I think if I pull the end of it in that direction, it'll cock back this way and probably pop right off. There we go. Well, I'm gonna drag this thing out of the yard. Now it's starting to get dark. I got things to do other than this, so I'm going to call it quits for today. Next step is going to be take that cylinder off the top, pull that off. I gotta get the pin out for that one. Once I get that cylinder off of there, then I figure what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to get that pin out, which is for the bottom of the cylinder for this arm. But in order to get that pin out, I'll probably have to take some tension off of it. Right now the full weight of this is on there. So I'll try and rig something up to jack up this end a little bit, and then I can get that pin out, drop that cylinder down, and then once I do that, I should be able to lower this end all the way down to the ground. And once I lower this end down to the ground, that should take tension off of this big huge pin here, hopefully. Or enough tension anyway so that I might be able to get that huge pin out and separate this arm from the machine.